Welcome to the Focus 3 podcast with Tim Kight and Urban Meyer. This is episode number 53. Coach, great to see you.
Great to see you, Tim, and ready to get to work.
Yeah, I was excited to get back in town and get back into our studio for two reasons. One was to see you and talk and catch up on stuff, and the other is I love these conversations. And today's topic is arguably one of the most important topics in the world. And we're going to talk about love. And we're going to define it. We're going to explain it. I heard you say many times to the team that love what you do, love where you do it, and love who you do it with. You said that every single Friday night before a game, Saturday mornings at a meal. And that was an Urban Meyer constant. Love what you do, where you do it, and who you do it with.
To get exceptional performance, you have to be very uncommon. You have to be elite. You have to be different than the team you're playing against. And the greatest form of motivation, and in my experience, there's not even a close second, is love.
Yeah.
And that's if you can somehow. We used to tell the story, and the players would we talk about it. You know, visualize someone walking in your home, kicking your door open, and going after your family. Those situations don't end well because the love you have for your family gives you superhuman strength.
The burglar doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't end well for the person entering, going to a place he shouldn't go. Mm-hmm. And the same thing if you create that kind of love within a team, and someone attacks your team. If it's real love, that won't go real well. Yeah. It's the greatest form of motivation. The other thing, Tim, is I want to hit real quick is that when you coach elite, I was very fortunate. The last 15 years, I've coached arguably the best players maybe in history of the game, from the Tebows to Zeke Elliott's to the Bosa's to Dwayne Haskins, and very blessed to be able to do that. And what I found is the better the athlete at times, you want to make sure that there's still the gift of gratitude, that they understand one of God's greatest gifts to us is compassion and gratitude. And gratitude, there's actually people out there that believe that they've earned that. God's touched these people on the shoulder and said, by the way, I'm going to give you 6'4", I'm going to give you 260 pounds, and you can still run like a receiver. You didn't earn that. That's a gift. You ended up a place like Ohio State, arguably the most powerful, wonderful university in the world. Get to play in front of 110,000 people. And then you surround yourself with like-minded, really quality people. Those are all gifts. And so that was a big point of it, too. You love what you do. Because you're given a gift, you can do that. Not many people can do what these, so-called freaks of nature can do. How many people get to do it at a place like Ohio State? And I would always say, and most importantly, look around, grab a hand, and realize who you're doing it with. And that's powerful.
It is. At the heart of every great relationship, every great family, every great business, every great school, every great team, a business unit within an organization is love. Love what you do, where you do it, and who you do it with. Let's get to work. So I think the challenge, though, having said all of that, and I know how deeply you believe in this notion of love, and I certainly share that belief and that commitment. My concern is, as I observe and interact with folks, is I'm not sure that love has been clearly defined. I think people have misinterpreted or misunderstood what it is. And for me, I go back to my training in the classics, classic languages, Hebrew, Greek, Latin. And the Greeks had 3 words for love, which was really helpful because love is multidimensional. And I think it'd be real helpful just for a moment to share how the Greeks viewed it, because it's this third. Well, here are the 3 words: Eros, Philia, and Agape were the 3 different words for love that the classical Greeks used. And those were 3 different kinds of love. And one is not necessarily wrong or right, but there's just 3 forms. So Eros is love that's based on feeling, and it's more me oriented. So we get the word erotic from it, but it doesn't mean sex love per se. It just simply means feeling. Like, I love beer and pizza. That's Eros, and that's fine. It's good. The second one is Philia, and that is we orient. It's love based on shared interest, and it's good. That plays a role. But the third word for love in Greek was agape, or is agape. And that's not me-oriented, that's not we-oriented, it's others-oriented. And my best interpretation or definition of agape is uncommon commitment. Because what agape does, it's selfless and it's sacrificial and it's others-oriented. It's the kind of love you just talked about when, love for family is I'll do anything to protect my family. I'll do anything to help my team. I'll do anything to make things better. And I'll even forego pleasure and experience pain in order to serve and help somebody else. So when I think of the kind of love that drives the performance of an elite organization, a great relationship, a great team, I think it's that agape. Is there feeling involved? Sure, but we'll talk about that in a second, but that's secondary. Is there shared interest involved? Yeah, there is, obviously. But to be elite, to be exceptional, uncommon commitment. Agree with that?
I do. And I remember the first time that you came and presented to our team in 2015, one of the first times. And we had a team sitting there that we just finished an undefeated season, yet we weren't a great team. We were a very good team. Great heart, very close.
It would have been 2013, you mean?
Yeah. Well, we won undefeated in 2012.
Right.
And in 2013 is when we first introduced, when you spoke to our team. And you remember it was uncommon and exceptional because the pursuit was elite performance. A matter of fact, when you're talking about arguably the most competitive environment there is, college football at the highest level. And how do you get this? And then I remember I got very upset because I was watching the team react to your conversation, and they had no idea what you're talking about. Because I agree with what you said. I'm not sure people, and I'm not throwing darts at others, even myself. I mean, do you really understand agape? Do you really understand unconditional love where, the visual I just gave you, someone walking in your home, pushing your wife out of the way, and that's
going after your kids.
Yeah, that's unconditional. If you could ever create that in a team, which we have on many occasions, you're talking about performances that are superhuman, that you can get people, organizations, teams to do the unthinkables. How do you get a third-string quarterback to go perform at the highest level? It wasn't because of self-gratification. It wasn't because of the salary maybe in NFL someday. It wasn't because of love of Ohio State. It was because of love of brother, unconditional love of brother. That's how you got that kind of performance.
I think about, the bond that creates. So there's a relational commitment that it creates. I think about that kind of love, that uncommon, it motivates, it energizes, and it inspires. And I think about everyone listening to us today who works in an organization someplace, or is a teacher in a classroom, or is a supervisor on the shop floor, or coaches a middle school lacrosse team or swim team. And I think about, one, those leaders need to love their people. They need to love the young people, to love the associates that they lead in, and if there is that bond that it creates, and then they want to generate that kind of uncommon commitment in them, right? So I think love starts with the leader. It starts with the leader, and
Well, let's hold that thought for a second. So a leader, and this is where I've seen failures from people, including myself, where love is not warm and fuzzy all the time. As a matter of fact, most of the time it's not. If I really care and love for you and I see something not going well, I'm going to help you fix that. And that means direct conversation. That means the greatest love a parent can show their child is discipline, is saying, okay, this isn't going well. It's not okay to do this. And is it uncomfortable at times? Sure. But is that that's one of the greatest forms of love, is when you can correct an issue and say, okay, I'm going to help you. So here's the greatest form of love from a coach to player in my mind, and very strong. I see you here. We got to get you here because that's what you want to do. I'm going to help you do that. Now, it's not going to be easy. It's going to, matter of fact, it's going to be the hardest. Think of the best coaches you've ever been around. They're usually the toughest. Think about the best teammates you've been around. They're the toughest. They're the guys that are relentless on forcing you, or not forcing, but directing you to do the hard. That's the greatest form of love when you start talking about being a parent, being a husband, and being a great leader of a team.
No question. So I think there's some myths out there about it. What you're triggering in my mind is some misunderstandings about the nature of this thing called love. Now, if it's Eros, it's feeling-based, like we said a
Sure.
moment ago. If it's Philia, it's friendship and shared interest. But here's the thing about those two. Use the word unconditional a moment ago for agape. So here's the thing about Eros and Philia. And again, folks, these are wrong forms of love. You just got to understand them and the role they play in your life. If you're driven by Eros love, when the feeling goes away, the love goes away. If you're driven by Eros love, when the feeling goes away, the commitment goes away. If you're driven by Philia love, when the shared interest goes away, the commitment goes away.
The common theme in those two, those are very conditional.
That's correct.
They're very conditional.
So the first is conditioned on a feeling. The second is conditioned on shared interest. This is the unique thing about agape. This is the unique thing about unconditional commitment, is it's not conditioned on feelings, and it's not conditioned on shared interest. It is simply committed. And so here's some misunderstandings about love in our world. Number one, it is a choice, not a feeling. So the misunderstanding is that love's a feeling. Well, no, not the kind we're talking about. It's a decision you made. I love saying it this way. Love isn't something you feel, it's something that you do. Love is not something you feel, it's something that you do. Now, is feeling involved? Yeah, here's my personal experience. I found out this, and I'm real interested in your coaching career if this is what took place. Like, have you ever worked hard to love someone that you didn't feel very good about?
I think
No names.
Of course. We've had many conversations amongst our staff about that you actually don't like that person, yet your job as leader, you have to find a way, and that's where ego's got to be put aside. You have to understand job description. At the end of the day, if you're responsible for elite performance, you have to create that or you're not going to get it. And yes, to answer your question, I would say more that way than the other way, where you're in some situation, you not necessarily like the behaviors, you don't like the attitude at times. However, Mike Thomas might be the greatest story of all time. There is pure, unconditional love for Mike Thomas I have for him and his family. There was times that it was on the other end of the spectrum where I wanted him out of our program because he was selfish, he didn't work, had excuses all the time. Mike Thomas, with the love that we showed him, his position coach, myself, our strength coach, his father, and actually Keyshawn Johnson, his uncle, from that time forward, you're talking about unconditional love for one another, and it's stronger than it's ever been to this day.
So here's a key point, folks. Uncommon commitment, the kind of love we're talking about, transcends emotion.
Absolutely.
It transcends it. Now, if
let's hold that thought for a second. That's really hard. And and that's I tried to
uncommon,
stop.
right? Uncommon.
Yeah, and that's when you spoke to that team that day. We were at Florida. We won 2 national titles. You don't do that unless there's agape love within that organization. It's too hard. There's too much adversity. There's too many injuries. There's too many situations that come up that in a tough, violent sport like football. And I imagine that correlates, to the military as well. Not that, obviously, never disrespect the military. What they do is real. Football's a game. However, when you stood in front of that team in 2013 and put exceptional uncommon up there, and I saw them nodding their heads, I stopped. I said, "You don't understand what we're talking about here." And I'm when you say agape love, unconditional love, how hard that really is to achieve that. How much time, focus, and as you say, go to work. How much effort, that effort put into a guy like Mike Thomas. And one day in church, and I shared this with our team, I share this with you. One day our priest in Gainesville actually did a wonderful job in his homily, and he's talking about love. He said, "How do you spell love?" Time. Inordinate amount of time and effort for agape love.
It's investment in someone else's best interest.
Ahead of yours.
Yeah. Now, so that's the first thing to understand, that love is a choice, not a feeling. Feelings are involved, but they follow. They don't direct. And if you keep loving, making this kind of choice to act in someone else's best interest, it's interesting how deep the emotions can become at some point. Number two, and this is important, and you were referencing a moment ago, love does not lower its standards. It is not soft. This is really interesting. The kind of love we're talking about, this agape, uncommon commitment, is not soft, and it doesn't lower its standards. In fact, it raises the standard and recognizes that a person will be better if they pursue that standard. Now, that's an uncomfortable thing. So you match those two things together. Choice, not feeling. It doesn't lower its standards. It is not soft. And that's why that motivates the parent, the leader, the friend, the coworker, the teacher, the teammate. Love motivates me to push you. Love motivates me to get you to do things you don't want to do because it's uncomfortable. And that's a notion that I think we need to return to in our nation today.
And in our profession, I think that's where most fail. I think that the word love, for some reason, there is a softness to it. You hear the word, and especially in line of work of coaching, teaching, leading, lowering standards because you feel for someone, maybe they're going through hard times, or you actually do love that person. However, you start to lower standards. That's not that's not going to make, at the end of the day, that's not going to help the situation. It's certainly not true love that you're showing that person.
And I think you can also look at you go back to the opening statement that I've heard you make. Love what you do, love where you do it, love who you do it with. So I think love for the what is important, right? I mean, if you're an artist and you play the piano or the violin, you love the instrument, you love the music, but then you have to love the process of getting great at that, and then you have to love giving that gift to an audience. That's hard work right there. But that's a what, a why, and a how. And love motivates and energizes all of that.
And what you have to be prepared for is some people don't. And that's okay. But at least be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And so in the game of football, and I'm going to equate it to, because that's my expertise, is that in the game of football, you're a very talented guy. Do you really love what you do? I do not. Okay, we're going to try to help you love it. If you don't, that's fine. Go do something else. Mm-hmm. Understanding that when we're talking about, and I love how you say this, uncommon and exceptional.
Yeah.
You can't get to that space if you don't love what you do.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, that's fine. That's fine. Go do something else then. That does not make you a bad person. Pay your taxes, live right, contribute to society, but be honest with yourself. I had this conversation with my son. My son wants to be a Major League Baseball player. Do you love what you do? And then is it unconditional? Is it to the point where you want to be uncommon? And I mean, some people consider it bizarre, like working 10 hours a day at a skill. You have to do that, or that's not going to happen. And by the way, son, that's okay. Not everybody makes it to the major leagues. You can still be a very valuable contributor, but understand how hard this whole conversation is not about average. It's not about being pretty good. I think this conversation is about uncommon, elite performance.
Yeah. That love for the craft, that love for the job, that love for the process of doing the job is critically important. While you're talking there, what popped into my head is this question I get asked all the time. What are the attributes of an inspiring leader? What makes a leader inspiring? I think it comes down to two things. And this is what I've observed. Great leaders inspire because they love the work they do and they love the people they work with. And you can feel it. When a great leader walks on the shop floor, when a great leader walks into the office building, when a great leader walks into the factory or the classroom or the court or the auditorium, you can feel her or his passion for the job. They love the work. And they love the people that they're working with. When those two things come together, that's inspiring leadership. Now, having said that, man, have I been around a lot of leaders where I can't tell that they love the job. And I can't tell that they love their people. I mean, it's
more importantly, if you can't tell, then the people that are following them, they know.
Yeah.
And I've had my best coaches, I from the Kerry Combses of the world to the Kyle Whittinghams, I've had incredible coaches along our journey. And what's the common denominator? You just hit them.
Yeah.
It's not X and O expertise. It's not I'm outsmarting you. It's not I outwork you. It's the uncommon love for what they do and who they do it with.
Which drives them to be good at X's and O's. Sure. It drives them to do the work, right? I mean, this is the point. Love is a motivator. Love's an energizer. Love's inspiring. And it's not always something that you feel. It's always something that you do. And here's the thing to me. It creates feelings in others. Now go back when you said, whether it's Mike Thomas or anybody else, when you're pushing them hard and you're motivated for their greatness, you're motivated for their success, you're motivated for what they can personally do, what their unit can do, and what they can do for the team. At some point, do they feel that, you think?
Absolutely. I mean, that's, to me, I'm getting a visual and actually chills as that player knows, and what is getting greater for you? His love and respect. And it's not the warm and fuzzy. That's where I think, once again, just 30-plus years of experience in that profession, especially 18, 19-year-olds.
Well, stop for a second. It's just something just occurred to me. This is fun. Obviously, I agree with you. It's not warm and fuzzy. But you just had a warm and fuzzy just now, thinking about the journey of pushing and loving and disciplining and focusing, but it created, in this moment, a warm and fuzzy feeling, correct?
And when you see Mike now, it's all warm and fuzzy.
See, this is my point.
To reach to that level.
Yes. This is
very
my
hard.
point. Love is a choice, not a feeling. Keep making the choice. Keep making the choice. Keep making the choice. And at some point, it feels. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool.
That's a great way of looking at it. Yeah. And I just did experience that. Because I had a visual of the timeline of what it took to get to that point. And it bothers me at times when and that's fine. I love you, man, and I'm thinking, no, you don't.
It's easy to say.
Don't throw that way out. It's as I say, it's very easy to say, very complicated to execute. And that's why in your life, how many true unconditional loves are there? And that's why how many true unconditional teams that perform at this level that you're like, how did they do that? That's not normal. They have the same players. These guys have the same players. Why did they just rip them apart? Is it there's actually people that bleed because of play calling, because of execution of strategy. And that's not what I believe. And that's never what I believed. You want an uncommon elite performance, there's got to be some kind of greater good involved in that. And their greater good is love for your teammate.
I'm envisioning two players in a game going up against each other, two opponents.
Talent equated.
Yep. And one guy is on a team where everyone loves what they do, where they do it, and who they do it with. And the other guy doesn't have that. But their talent's the same, and both play calls, offensive and defensive play calls, are fantastic, right? Great offensive call, great defensive call. Both players recognize the play, they recognize the the pattern, whatever it is, and then boom, that ball is snapped, and they're going to compete. Who's going to win that matchup?
It's not even close. And at some point, I'm sure we'll talk about that. That's also the edge. That's what forces you to do the superhuman. And some people, what are you talking about, superhuman? Well, if you got 7 hours, I'll show you videotapes of superhuman performances. What made that person do that?
Yeah.
And the greatest form of motivation, the greatest form of strength is love.
Yeah. So let me paint another picture. 4th grade teacher walks into her classroom, and she loves teaching, and she loves those kids. What kind of day is that going to be for that teacher? I see the supervisor.
As important, what kind of day is it for the students?
It's my point.
They're walking out of there better than when they walked in.
Now,
I'm going to give you the opposite. How about the grumpy teacher that doesn't like what she does, or he does, and has disregard for the unfortunate? I've seen those classrooms too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine for them, but more importantly, there's a group of students. It's like, how about the position coach that really doesn't like what they do or where they do it? And you wonder why the guys don't perform.
Yeah.
And have I seen that? I've seen that.
Yeah.
And that makes your head pop off your shoulders, because that's their selfish choice. They made that decision. The people that are impacted, and this is all about leadership, are more important than you. You just impacted that group of people, and they won't get that back.
I was recently in a customer service situation. I observed it where something had gone wrong in a service thing, in a business deal. It was a hotel, and this person at the hotel turned to the patron, and you could tell this person loved their job of customer service. This person loved solving problems and loved that guest. I'm watching this interaction. I'm just checking in, and this other person over here with a problem, and I'm watching it, and I'm going, that's uncommon commitment at work. This person, and you could. I think she said, I know this is a problem. We're really sorry this happened. I love solving these kind of problems. And she just dove into helping this person. And I'm watching this guest of the hotel go from irritated to really happy about the experience that he was receiving. So it works. This is true every place. Classrooms.
Well, let's go back to
place.
the visual of the two players that equated in talent. One's going to outperform the other. Why? The greatest motivation and form of strength is love. How about the two teams? And when a team fails, the first thing that the evaluators are the fans and the media. That's the world we live in. It's very easy to evaluate. You win or lose. When that team loses, first people they go after is the coach. Second group of people they go after players. I've always done the opposite. I say, wait a minute, lift up the hood of the car. There's something wrong here. Mm-hmm. It's not bad coaches. You don't get to Ohio States of the world without your excellent strategic understanding the game of football. You do not get to Ohio State unless you're a supreme athlete, unless you're very good. Why are you not performing? And that's the question. Lift up the hood of the car and find out what is the problem. There's a chemistry issue. There's a love issue. And those are the to me, that's the real leadership. That's the best coaches, leaders that I've been around and studied are the ones that are willing to put in the time and effort and discomfort to go find out what the heck is the problem. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you the problem most of the time. The problem is not going to be what the play call was. There's a distrust or a lack of love within this organization, and that's why you're losing. Yeah. And I think as we're getting ready to do a football season coming up here, there's going to be teams that win and there's going to be teams that loses. When the teams win, great play call. No, great job developing that team. When the team loses, bad play call. No, there's something wrong with the team, and you got to get it right.
So another thing that just came into my mind is let's just envision a company that's trying to buy a product or a service and has a number of vendors trying to sell them. And sales rep number one comes into the office and sits down with the prospect, and sales rep number one loves his job and loves the process of selling and loves talking to customers to help him out. It's driven by an uncommon commitment to his craft, his product, and customers, clients. He leaves after having the conversation, the sales call. The second sales rep comes in from a different company. Same quality product, same quality service, pretty much the talent's equated. But this person has a job and is just trying to make it by. Has some basic sales skills and has gone through sales training, read a bunch of sales books and gone to some sales seminars, but doesn't really love his craft. Doesn't really love his product. Doesn't really love customers. It's kind of Eros, but not Agape. If he's feeling it, he's good. If he's not feeling it, he's not disciplined. Who's going to win that sale?
I'll give you a real-life example. Shelley and I sitting in our living room, and we won some games at a certain university, and we started getting a lot of feelers out if we would leave to go to another school and be the coach, and great universities. And one AD comes in, and it's Agape love for his university. You can tell. I mean, it's teared up. It's passionate about. He did his work, and I didn't know much about this university. Another university comes in, and it's not that at all. They're checking the box. They're in a hurry. Matter of fact, this person was in a hurry. They had to go somewhere to be in another state to go do something, and he told me that. And I remember Shelley actually got up and walked away and started walked as he to his back as she's walking in the kitchen. She gave me we're not doing this, without even knowing more about other things that were involved. It was because the presenter, the salesperson, certainly didn't love his place. And that was about a 4-minute decision made, done, over, because of the example. When you were telling me that story, I got a visual.
Yeah,
exactly what happened. And within 4 minutes, the decision was made, and more importantly, by the person who knows more than I do, my wife. She said, this person has first of all, no love for you, no love for the university they're representing. We're going to move our family. And she gave me one of these, said, this one's done. I was like, we're 4 minutes into this. But that was a very clear visual.
I conclude from that an important thing. Love isn't how you feel, it's how you make somebody else feel.
Wow.
Love is not how you feel, it's how you make somebody else feel.
Strong, yeah.
Here's another thing about it. Love and trust are not the same thing. And I think we get into big problems when we equate the two. They are different. Both important, and they're different. How about this? Love is a gift that is freely given, or should be freely given. Trust is a privilege that should always be earned, and don't reverse them. Don't make someone earn your love.
Slow down.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to say it again.
So love is freely given.
Love is a
trust has
gift.
to be earned.
Yeah, love is a gift that should be freely given. Trust is a privilege that should always be earned, and don't reverse them. Don't make people earn your love, and don't give away your trust. So question, can you love somebody you don't trust? And the answer is, of course. My joke is teenagers, but the reality is, like when Mike Thomas was in his blaming, complaining, BCD kind of, did you trust him? Did you start him? Did you play him all the time?
Of course not.
Did you love him?
So I have a hard time with that a little bit. I get where you're going with that, and we've had this. I don't know if you remember Larry Johnson, one of our great coaches, and I have a hard time with that. Still, I do understand it. Was it unconditional love at that point? It certainly wasn't agape love, because I don't think, I just think this is great conversation, and I'm just trying to visualize that here's a player that's not done what I've asked him to do, has not worked at and he's actually a detriment to our team.
Right.
Do I love him as much as the JT Barrett? Is it the same, so when you say you don't earn that love, to say that after what I saw he did for us and his relentless pursuit of greatness, his selflessness that would put team ahead of self, I loved him more than when he was a selfish guy. And if you say that, I don't know if I necessarily agree with all that.
So here's where you and I have debated before in the past, and this is great. We're having it here. I would contend this. This is why I make the distinction between love and trust. I would contend this, and having watched you, yes, you loved Mike in those dark times. You loved him with agape, unconditional love. That's why you pushed him, but you didn't trust him because he hadn't earned it. He had not earned the trust. And those feelings of, I'm not putting him on the field. I don't feel the same way about him as I do about JT Barrett. Why not? Well, because he hadn't earned the trust yet. What motivated you to keep coaching him? Love.
I got you.
See what I'm saying? So I think
I guess the feeling of love is different once that person.
Of course it is.
Which might be the Eros, or the feeling of once I've seen Mike Thomas do some of the ultimate sacrifices you can do on a football field, my love, I felt more love for him. But for me to spend that inordinate amount of time to get him to that point, there was that love there.
And that's the thing that I think derails us sometimes is
Interesting.
Yeah, we think that, and I think Mike Thomas is just a great microcosm example of how this plays out in the real world every place. And I use kids as an example because there are times, or even spouses, there are times when we don't feel feelings of love the way we want to for our immediate family, whether it's a partner or a spouse or a child. But we keep leading, we keep loving, we keep doing. Why? Because we're committed, because there's this uncommon commitment, because there's this desire to serve. And at some point you do that for a long time, feelings begin to emerge that are very deep, very deep. So when I would contend this, how about this? This is an interesting thought. When you have agape love for somebody and they're behaving badly, you shouldn't feel good about it. When you have agape love for Mike Thomas,
unconditional love for Mike,
and Mike's not doing what you want him to do, you shouldn't feel good about it. Why? Because of your standards.
Right.
He fell below the standards, but you still love him, meaning what? You still act in his interest. You still push him. You still coach him. You still try to solve that mystery with that guy. What motivates that? Love motivates.
At what point then would that love cease, or does it ever? So at some point, because we all, and if there's leaders listening to this podcast, there's going to be times where you're going to make a change. That person is not living up to standards. I do love them, but it's time to move.
Correct. So therein the difference between love and trust. So because the person hadn't earned confidence, hadn't earned your trust, that person gets moved to the side. You asked a great question. When does the love cease? I'm going to go biblical for a second. 1 Corinthians 13 in the New Testament says, love never ceases. Now, that doesn't mean that you give a person a role they didn't deserve. That's the difference between love and trust. But you continue, have players left that never performed to the standard that you needed to, that you still care about them?
Oh, sure.
So the love hasn't stopped. But that's the point about like I loved my kids when they were 16, but I didn't fully trust them, and I shouldn't have trusted them. Why? Because they were 16 years old. And I think what we've done is we've meaning the world. I mean, we've misunderstood this relationship between trust and love. And I think it's a really interesting notion that it is love that motivates us to feel badly about how someone's performing if they're not meeting the standards. Does that notion make sense?
It does. And as you were talking, I still got the visual of what's the principle, or what's the pointed direction of this conversation is elite performance.
Yeah.
Uncommon elite performance.
And built on elite relationships that's bonded by love. Yeah.
And there's only we'll talk about ownership at some other point, but they're the two greatest forms of, like I said, just visualize. And that was my dream. For 17 years, I told people, I laid awake at night and said, how do we get elite, exceptional performance? I'd worry about offensive plays, what's going to happen on defense, special teams, but I knew deep in my soul, and one of the things that I was blessed with is I knew to get exceptional elite performance, it's much more than that. It's how do you create that family bond or that love within the team.
Yeah. Maybe this will help, and I'm going to wrap it up with this because I think this will be a great capstone to it. Love is not the same thing as approval. Love is not the same thing as approval. In fact, that's the whole point about standards and about principles and about timeless truth. And you turn to somebody that you care very much about, that you really want to help them, whether you're a leader or a teacher or a coach, a parent, and you see what they're doing and they're falling below the standards. And you look and you say, I do not approve of that. That is not helpful. That's harmful. That's wrong. That's ineffective. Because I love you, I'm going to push you, but I don't approve of that because that's not that's out of alignment with our culture. That's not what we do in our craft. So love and approval are not the same thing, and I think that we make that mistake a lot of times, and this goes to softness myth, where because I love you, okay, I'll let it slide. And then people think if you think love is approval, you're always looking for the approval from people. No. If you love your craft, you love the standards, you love the process, you love the people, your standards are high, and you don't approve of behavior out of alignment with the standards. So love and approval are different, and we do damage to people and to organizations and families if we equate the two. Are we good with that one?
Very good.
Yeah. So there's common love and there's uncommon. There's what's normal and then there's elite. And this uncommon commitment, this agape love, is the bond that creates the kind of relationships that fuel elite performance.
Move mountains.
And move mountains. Yep. So folks, love what you do, make the choice. Love where you do it, make the choice. And love who you do it with, make the choice. Go do the work.